defending the free market, and making the moral case for capitalism. The Justin Moore Show.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Justin Moore Show, where we make sense of what's going on in this crazy, insane, out of control world. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I am back from the great country of Australia. Man, it was an amazing trip. I'm not going to dive in and tell you guys everything I did in Australia. And, I think I have so many stories to tell. I'm just going to kind of, as the need arises, I need to somehow talk about kangaroos relating to some sort of news story, like say in Venezuela, somehow they got kangaroos in the zoo and they were eating them or something. I could mention, my interactions with kangaroos on a golf course in Australia, or seeing them in the wild as you drive by. Australia is seriously just such a beautiful, beautiful country. Just driving along the Great Ocean Road right along the coast, seeing the famous 12 apostles, which are only like 7 today, that still remain standing, that are just, right on the shore of the water, just big old rocks sticking up. It's absolutely beautiful. I've gotten some amazing pictures. Man, it's just so much. It really is. And just traveling like that, getting to see another part of the world like that, it really is amazing. And you see people, they talk differently in Australia. I mean, okay, comparing it to here in the United States, comparing it here in Montana, where I reside. You're saying something, you're thanking the waiter or waitress, thanks for the drinks, thanks for the food, and no worries. They always say no worries. So instead of saying you're welcome, it's no worries. It's always no worries. It's like, well, I don't think I was really worried, but it's just really crazy. And just because, growing up, you always hear people trying to act like they're Australian. And I know when I was growing up, the crocodile hunter growing up, talking about crocky me home, and then the guy ends up dying from a stingray attack where he pulled the barb out of him. And that's what really killed him. He should have left the barb in and went to the hospital, and he probably would be alive today. And actually, if you guys ever make it to Australia, if you want to go to the zoo where his daughter works today, actually I never made it to there either. Because, Australia, if you want to do the country right, well, at least quasi-right, and try to see as much as you possibly can, you need about 3 weeks. I was only there a week, but what I saw in 1 week, it's about as much as you could see in a week. I was cram-packed, seeing a lot of things, drove 1,700 miles in the rental car. And that's just going basically from Sydney going to Melbourne. It's a 9-hour drive, going along the Great Ocean Road. And I plan on going back to Australia at some point, and just basically try to work the other side and, go up by the Great Barrier Reef. That's a huge drive from there. So maybe I could do some sort of bonus episode in the future, kind of talking about what I recommend that you do if you kind of need some ideas, if you plan on going to Australia. Because Australia is one of those countries that's on everybody's bucket list. Like, oh my God, I got to go to Australia before I die. Australia has been on my bucket list for years and years and years. And it's like, dang it, I just need to go do it. Especially when I have, the flight benefit sort of thing. It's like, it's a long flight. Heck, the flight is not near as long as it was going to Singapore. Singapore, you're basically in the air 17 and a half, 18 hours. Australia, at least on the way back, was around 13 hours. So that wasn't too bad, even though Australia is basically just below Singapore, just further south. But it's amazing how much more hours that adds on. So I'm not going to drone on about Australia, because there really is. I have so many stories to tell, and as these episodes go on throughout 2018, you guys are going to hear about my little adventures in Australia. So that's what I'm going to do. But right now, I want to talk about what Trump just announced on Thursday, March 8th, just a few days ago. He doesn't want to. He is going to impose tariffs on steel and aluminum. So what Trump wants to do, he's going to impose a 25% tariff on all steel imports into the United States. And he wants to have 10% tariffs on imports in regards to aluminum. Now, as he announced this, it's basically going to take effect in 15 days from when he announced it, March 8th, so whatever the hell day that is. We're at basically the end of March. So after these 15 days, these are going to go into effect. Now, he did exempt Canada and Mexico, and he did offer other countries that maybe he would offer more exemptions. And, I was reading a bunch of articles on this. And, obviously, you want to compare this issue, you can look at, okay, conservative, liberal, libertarianism. Okay, so what we're going to do, I just want to really just boil this stuff down and just really get down to the meat of tariffs. Just try to make this so it's not just like, oh yeah, I just want to roll your eyes. Okay, yada, 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 tariffs, Smoot-Hawley, yeah. But we should just say something really briefly about Smoot-Hawley. Smoot-Hawley was implemented. Some people say, oh yeah, Smoot-Hawley was the cause of the Great Depression. No, I would say no, it wasn't the cause of the Great Depression, but it definitely made things worse. So you had in 1930, the Smoot-Hawley tariff went into effect. It basically affected and caused a tariff on over 20,000 imported goods into the United States. So what happens when you do that? Well, a lot of countries retaliated and they said, you know what, okay, you guys want to impose tariffs on our imported goods? Fine, we're going to do the same to you. That's what they did. So it was a trade war. So at the end of the day, if you were to boil down tariffs, what are they? Well, tariffs are, yes, it is a form of protectionism. You're protecting your own goods so you can try to make your goods basically be more competitive against foreign goods. But the question is, okay, wait. Why are we trying to protect our goods compared to other goods? Why don't we just look at them? Because at the end of the day, we're all consumers. Do the goods really matter where they come from? If you can buy a good cheaper, are you looking, oh man, say this good is 50% cheaper than the other good and it's made in China? For a lot of people, they're going to be like, yeah, I want to save money. I want to have money for some other good. So I'm going to buy the one, okay, yeah, it says made in China, but it basically meets my ends just as well as something made in the U.S. So I'm not willing to pay more for it. So that's when you really boil it down. It's a bunch of individuals trading. So that's how a lot of these things get so convoluted and confusing, and people look at it differently. It's like the same thing with you looking at macroeconomics and microeconomics, where what makes sense at the micro level, at the family level, at the individual level in terms of economics and saving money and spending money doesn't make sense in terms of when you're looking at something in terms of a nation engaging in economics. Like when something gets bigger in scale, the same principles don't apply. Then you have a multiplier effect and all this other stuff. You're like, what the hell? Are you guys freaking crazy? So it's the same sort of thing. So when you have tariffs, no, it's just a bunch of individuals trading when we're trading with these countries. We're buying their goods. They hold U.S. dollars. So they got to spend those U.S. dollars. They can either invest it in our debt, which is what mostly China has been doing. Japan's been doing also. They can also buy our goods. But when you want to increase our tariffs, that is going to cause some sort of a trade war where now you have, okay, well, it's like China, the amount of steel that we get from China is around 2 to 3% of our GDP. So it's really not much. But it's going to cause some sort of retaliation. So in regards to these tariffs, what's really going on is he's kind of being consistent with how he's been in the campaign trail. During the campaign, Trump's saying, yeah, make America great again, which is kind of a nationalist viewpoint. And a lot of these people who believe in protectionism, this mercantilism, it's really sort of based in nationalism. Now, even during the campaign, when Trump was in the Republican primary, I'm pointing out how a lot of Trump's views on trade and the things he's saying about China, it's really mercantilist. The mercantilist economic theory, that's what was big over in Europe back in the 1500s. It's the idea that wealth in the world is static. So by static, you mean that there's a set amount of wealth out there. So the more goods that you can export, that's like your national income. The more income a nation can have, then that means it's less income that other countries can have. So you want to be a heavy export country, that you're making a lot of income. You want to export more than you income. This also means, and this goes right along with gold. With gold, a lot of these mercantilist countries, if they want to have more wealth, they need to accumulate more gold. So, you have these pirates going taking over ships. You want to try to just grab as much gold as you can, put as much money into gold mining as you can, because more gold means more wealth, which that's not the case. Even though I'm a huge advocate of the gold standard, that's not how it works. Just because a country is accumulating a lot of gold does not mean they're wealthy. It's how productive are you? How much goods can you produce? Because remember, guys, I've said this how many times on this show? And it's basic economics, which most people don't seem to get, except for listeners of this show and people just really in tune with the, libertarian sort of Austrian economics out there. That if you want to consume something, you first have to produce something. How can you trade with someone if you have nothing to trade? Right? Yes, you can demand things as much as you want, but if you have nothing to trade, you're not getting it. So if you're not getting it, it's just a dream. Okay, and then I see here, man, I just looked through so many pieces in regards to this Trump deal on tariffs. And you have George Will here, and I just want to pull up just one little paragraph where he's talking about and kind of what the idea is with what Trump's doing with these tariffs. Is he saying it's a national security issue? That's why this decision to impose these tariffs on steel and aluminum, Trump's able to do it because he's saying, hey, it's national security. National security in terms of, metals, metal production. The president can act unilaterally. So that's what he's doing. So George Will in his piece, he's saying, hey, these people who like to invoke national security, they can rationalize a multitude of sins. And George Will goes on. Senator Marco Rubio, Republican of Florida, says the sugar import quotas that enrich a few already rich Floridians are required for America's food security. It will be desirable, because educational, if some nations retaliate for the steel and aluminum tariffs by imposing 25% tariffs on Florida citrus in the interest of food security. Yeah, so here's Marco Rubio. A lot of conservatives love Marco Rubio. Yeah, he's this big-time conservative. He's small government. That's what they think. And here, Marco Rubio's defending sugar import quotas in Florida. Okay, yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, you got to, it's at the end of the day, all these senators, you're trying to protect your own constituency when you live in Florida. You got to protect what Florida's known for. And so that's what Marco Rubio's doing. See, a lot of these guys, they're not small government at all. They'll have their own little interests, their own forms of big government. And then what I really liked, Sheldon Richman, he wrote for the Libertarian Institute, which is Scott Horton's site. And at the very beginning of his piece, he has a quote here from Henry George in regards to talking about tariffs. And I thought this is such an amazing quote. And it says this: what protection teaches us is to do to ourselves in time of peace what enemies seek to do to us in times of war. End quote. That's from Henry George. There you go. I mean, typically countries should want to trade. You trade with other countries. Oh, but see, here I am. I'm making the mistake that everyone else makes too. It's that you're looking at things in terms of countries trading. Oh, it is just a bunch of individuals trading, demanding products. Say you buy cars, from Honda or Toyota, that are, based overseas. Well, I mean, you're favoring those companies, but even those companies, they have factories here in the U.S. And a lot of these goods, even if you were to buy from a company like Ford, it's a U.S.-based company, in order for those cars or trucks to be made, they're assembled in different countries like Mexico. These parts come from different countries. So there's still a lot of trade that takes place. And Trump wants to impose these aluminum and steel tariffs. It's definitely going to affect the cost of automobiles. The price of automobiles will go up because of these tariffs. And so why would we do this to ourselves? Why would we impose tariffs? Okay, if Donald Trump really, and it does seem like he thinks this way, unless it's some grand scheme, Trump's always 3 steps ahead of everybody else. So he's doing this in some way to, I don't know, maybe for negotiations of NAFTA, which to a small extent, that could be possible. Where Trump he's going to impose these tariffs because it's basically when he goes to negotiate with Canada and Mexico, it's a way to negotiate that, okay, yeah, I'll just get rid of the tariffs altogether. Even though he's exempted Canada and Mexico, these tariffs are still affecting Canada and Mexico. And actually, towards the end here, I want to talk about the 5 main countries that we import to and the 5 main countries that we export to, which coincidentally, it's almost the 5 same countries. And so what Henry George just said here, what protection teaches us is to do to ourselves in time of peace what enemies seek to do to us in times of war. There's also that famous quote from Frederick Bastiat, where when goods don't cross borders, soldiers will. Because we trade It doesn't matter what the trade is. Domestically, you're trading with your neighbor, or you're trading with someone from another country. You're trading because it's beneficial to you, right? So, if we want to protect ourselves, the United States, say we're really nationalist, the nationalist perspective on things like Trump seems to be, if we want to be like that, that's only hurting ourselves and those other countries, because now we're not buying the goods at the best prices available. Or there's a lot of countries that produce certain goods that they have the comparative advantage at producing those goods. So if you want to have more goods in society as a whole, then you want to buy from the most efficient and effective producers, the ones with the comparative advantage. It's like, for instance, okay, yeah, I guess we could grow oranges in Montana if we wanted to. We just have a bunch of greenhouses and, grow all these fruits that you only see down in Florida and all these areas that are really hot and have these super long sunny seasons that Montana doesn't have. Or we could leave it up to Florida to produce the oranges. In Montana, we can produce something else that you're not going to find in Florida, because we need to maximize their land for growing what they're best at producing. It's just like even where I live, right outside of Billings, Montana. You go over just a few hours over to Bozeman. The difference in just like when you go to cut hay, we can get 3-4 cuttings of hay over here right outside of Billings. You go to Bozeman, man, they get about 2. So just the growing season there, just the amount of we are much more efficient at producing. We get a lot more sunny days than over in Bozeman does, by a huge degree that it affects our growing season. And that's just a matter of 2 hours away. Then you look at, from Florida to, and so protectionism is really silly, because you're supporting inefficiency. You're not trying to trade with someone who's the best at what they're doing. They have other sort of external advantages. By all means, let them produce what they're best at and you produce what you're best at. And at the end of the day, there's more goods around. When there's more goods around, prices tend to fall. Who benefits from falling prices the most? Is it the rich man or is it the poor man? Well, it's really the poor man. They actually benefit the most from a free trade. So by having these protectionist tariffs like Trump wants, he's hurting those people he says he wants to protect. The steel industry, Trump says he wants to protect. Okay, let's look at it that way. So for every one steel worker that Trump wants to protect, there are 46 people in the steel consuming industries. So you're trying to help one steel worker compared to the 46 that are affected by the increased price of steel. How much sense does that make? That doesn't make any sense to me. And then you have, there's a lot of Republicans backlashing in terms of Mr. Trump and his policy in regards to tariffs. And you had Gary Cohn, one of his chief economic advisor. He announced his sudden resignation. He's like, I can't do this anymore. He's like, he doesn't like the idea of Trump pursuing tariffs. This Gary Cohen's more of a Democrat. And this was so funny as hell. This is what Trump said. Gary Cohen's in there. He's basically thanking Gary Cohen for everything he's done. This is what he says. This is not a joke. He may be a globalist, but I still like him. The president said as Mr. Cohen sat in a chair along the wall and smiled, he's seriously a globalist. There's no question. You know what? In this way, he's a nationalist because he loves his country. Trump, I can't believe this guy. He just goes on and on. He says some crazy stuff. But that is the nice thing about Trump, where Trump, a lot of things he does is just to be funny, and that's just his personality. So understand that. I just think that's hilarious. I don't think that's, oh my gosh, whatever. But Trump definitely does some very destructive things. He definitely has this sort of mercantilist point of view, even though to a certain extent maybe he does want to use this for some sort of negotiation tactics in regards to NAFTA, which NAFTA was disastrous. TPP was disastrous. But the reason why Trump doesn't like these deals is for the wrong reasons. He just says they're not good enough deals. No, we don't need trade deals anyway. Let's have free trade. Allow individuals to trade across borders. What's the difference between trading in the United States and Australia or over in Europe, wherever it is, or Canada? What does it matter if you're trading, like say you're in Montana, like where I'm at, and you want to trade with California or any other state? Let's just say, the world is just made up of the United States. Would we be more beneficial is if we had trade agreements with all these states instead of just like, hey, let's just trade. Just individuals trading between states, among states, you know? But apparently it's some sort of way different principle when you're trading with another nation. There's some sort of aggregate income, and you look at things in terms of trade deficits. Oh my gosh, America's had this long trade deficit. Well, I mean, for one instance, you can look at that as a positive because people are benefiting, people are liking our goods. That means they're holding US dollars that they can invest, foreign direct investment. That's one big thing the United States has going. Now, the problem that really gets thrown into this mess is when we've been propping up and we've been paying for all these goods with printed money like QE. So when you're paying for goods with printed money and money you don't have. So say China's holding a bunch of IOUs. And as China's holding IOUs, we're receiving goods. So the American consumer, man, we're loving this. We get goods, we give them IOUs. But at some point, China's like, hey, well, I got these IOUs here worth trillions of dollars and I would like to get some goods for them. Well, at that point, okay, where's our goods at? What goods can China receive for their money that they have invested in us? Well, I guess they could start buying up land, whatever it is. They got to somehow convert those IOUs into something. Or over time, and what's been going on now, is the slow devaluation of those IOUs through inflation, the hidden inflation that most people still don't really see. But it's certainly out there. The government statistics out there are definitely understating the inflation rate. And once that comes known that, oh my gosh, inflation, wow, it's really getting out of control. It's much higher than the 2% they say that we have. You're going to see the market more accurately reflect goods that are going to benefit the most from inflation, like, say, gold and silver, which gold and silver have stayed depressed for years now, since their highs of 2011. And so just looking at with tariffs in general, and I don't want to beat the hell out of this issue too much. I'm just going to conclude here really, really soon. But the idea, if we were just to have tariffs, but the idea with tariffs is, okay, protection. You want to protect your industries. But when a country's protecting their industries at the expense of others, what do you have a problem with right there? Well, the government right there is picking winners and losers. Is that good or bad? Do they really know which industries are the best out there and which are the worst? No. It depends on how they're being represented in terms of lobbyists. Those ones tend to have the most influence on the politicians. So it's really political interests, right? So it's not necessarily the best or the worst that are getting taken out or that are getting the most money. And then also, when companies are being protected by, say, these steel and aluminum tariffs, what has been shown throughout history, you look up the effects of tariffs. The protected industries, what do you have? You have less innovation. There's less competition from outside sources, like other countries. Competition is a good thing. Competition brings out the best in us. Competition is what lowers prices, what increases the quality of goods. Protection is limiting those effects. And then I guess if you want to think of what a trade war does, it's really kind of like the self-sufficient farm philosophy. It's like, well, why doesn't everyone just have a self-sufficient farm? You don't have to trade. You just produce your own food. You consume your own food. But all of your time is spent just producing your own food so you can survive, right? So let me ask you, let's just say, we all just had our own little self-sufficient farm, lived in the country. How much wealth would you have? When all you're consuming, when all of your time is going towards trying to survive, you have no standard of living at all. All of your time is gone to food and your shelter. So now if we go to look at society in general, what do we consider someone who's poor? Well, the little money that they have goes towards their shelter and their food. Like, they're just barely surviving. They don't have money to go and, take trips to, Australia or, go see the world or go on cruises or, to buy iPads and iPhones, all this technology that can make us better off, that can make us more productive, or to buy a car. No, all their money is going to just surviving. So when you don't want to trade with other nations, you just want to focus with your high-cost producers and you don't want to take advantage of that competitive advantage other countries may have at producing other products so you can produce more goods overall, you're hurting the poor. You're making a lot of people poor. That, yeah, we should just all be self-sufficient. Because at the end of the day, every single one of us out there, every single one of you listening to this show right now, we are all consumers. Yes, we have to produce. When you are working for an employer, you're working for some big company, what are you at that point? You're a producer, right? You're producing some sort of good, some sort of marketable good that they're using so that they can make money, then they can pay you for your services. And typically an employer is paying you the less than what you're really worth because they're actually making a sort of profit on you. Okay, but you're willing to work for them because, well, you're making money. You're a producer, so then you're able to consume in the future. You're able to pay your rent. You're able to buy food. You're able to, go on trips. You're able to invest money in the future. So then you can make your money work for you. When you invest money in the stock market or in, these companies you think are good investments, what are you doing? At that point, you're a producer. You're helping apply capital to companies you think that need it. And with this money, these companies take that capital and they're trying to turn it into a profit. And when they turn a profit, that's more money for you, the stakeholder, the investor. So then you win. It's a win-win. Trade is a win-win. This isn't a mercantilist society of a static wealth out there. The size of the pie is always growing. Trade is a win-win, or we wouldn't do the trade in the first place. So we need to have a free market out there. We shouldn't have any tariffs out there, And here's Trump taking us back to the 1930s. Well, we don't really have to go back that far. Even Ronald Reagan imposed tariffs. George W. Bush imposed steel tariffs in 2002. Those tariffs were supposed to go on for 3 years, but because of all the pressure that George W. Bush got, he had to lift the tariffs after 15 months from all these countries like, hey, no, man, it's not going to work. So I just want to finish this episode. I just want to tell you guys, if you guys were to guess, okay, what are the top 5 countries of the United States that we export to? Okay, I'm going to tell you. Canada, Mexico, China, Japan, and the UK. All in that order, okay? And now, what are the top 5 import countries? China, Mexico, Canada, Japan, Germany. So the top 5 is almost identical, except for Germany makes the top 5 in terms of our imports, whereas in terms of exports, the UK is there. But pretty much it's all the same countries. So when Trump wants to negotiate NAFTA, oh yeah, NAFTA's a horrible deal. Canada and Mexico, they're huge trading partners here with the United States. The top two and top 3. So when Trump says, yeah, we just got to get better deals, all we need is better deals. No, we don't need better deals. We need the government to get the hell out of the way and allow people to trade without these government barriers. Yeah, Trump is so good about trying to talk about, the cost of regulations on society. So here, yeah, he wants to cause deregulation, but the other end, with tariffs, it's increasing a sort of way of companies trying to do business. So it's increasing the barriers to entry. So he's kind of going against the good he's trying to do with deregulation. So what Trump's doing, I don't know, Trump is really a goofy sort of character in that he kind of just does, it's all on the cuff. He does have some sort of general principles, it seems-ish, but he also does a lot of things just to maneuver and to figure out what the other people are doing. Then that's how he kind of wiggles out little deals, but he doesn't have principles. But he definitely seems to have that mercantilist point of view. And you've seen Trump talk about gold. Trump talks about how he likes gold. He'd love to have a gold standard, but the other countries have too much gold. The United States needs to have more gold. Now again, that's the mercantilist point of view. You just thinking that there's some sort of static wealth that, yeah, if we just had more gold as a country, that means we'd be wealthier. So, no, I don't think Trump is this guy who's always 3 steps ahead. I do think he's smart. I do not think he's a dumb man at all, by any stretch. But I definitely think his view of economics is certainly different than us of the Austrian persuasion. So anyway, guys, I'm going to leave you there with that. I'm so glad to be back here in the U.S., although Australia was an amazing trip. It was a great little break from the winter here in Montana. It seems like we might have spring eventually here. Snow is starting to melt. Man, we've had a lot of snow. But I can't wait for spring to get in the tractor, start doing all that sort of stuff, so I can export my goods. So anyway, guys, if you want to catch up on old episodes, just go to justinmooreshow.com, or spelled M-O-H-R. All my episodes are there. I don't know. This is like episode like 170 or something like that. And also, if you want to donate to the show, just again, it's at my website. You can just click on the link. You can buy goods through Amazon through my link there. I get a small commission back, costs you nothing extra. You donate to my show, whatever you want to do. I'm just going to keep this short. I just thank you guys so much for listening to me today. I'll be back here next week, and I'm looking forward to it. This is Justin Moore, signing off.